Clay is the self-described greatest Doctor Who fan of all time. Can you tell me?
Self-described by you mean?
The self is a difficult thing to determine if you're using multiple speakers. People say that this is a Doctor Who episode, and they mention the TARDIS frequently. Do you want to explain what the relationship is there, or why people would say such a thing about this one?
Well, not only does it involve a temporal Cold War, but the ship that they pull in is bigger on the inside, which is the hallmark of Doctor Who's transportation known as TARDIS. Yes.
I would never have gotten that on a Jeopardy question. I've never watched Doctor Who, I don't think, or at least I've never seen enough to really make that connection. I didn't realize it was such a specific thing. I thought it was just the general look of it, but he flies around in like a telephone box or something, right? So there's no... Yeah.
It's a police box from the 50s, I think.
Okay. Police box? Yeah, okay.
And it's... that's the thing. Everybody who's new to the show, characters who are new to the show, take a step in, and they, in some variations, say it's bigger on the inside.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we're talking about future tense, obviously. So let's take a break. After I've been educated about Doctor Who, we'll come back. Clay will give us more tidbits about how this is more like Doctor Who, and then we'll continue with our analysis of it. So it's future tense. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
If I had a chance to see the past, I'd jump at it. I always wanted to meet a Stegosaurus.
He'd probably make a quick meal of you.
The Stegosaurus was an herbivore.
Seems like we were just in here. If I could travel back, I know exactly what year I'd pick. 1588?
How'd I know you were going to say that?
I think we're spending far too much time together.
Future Tense is the 16th episode of the second season, aired on February 19th, 2003. It is the 7th of 13 in the Temporal Cold War arc, which is kind of shocking that we've had 7, although maybe a lot of them have been like this one, which it is only tangentially related to the Cold War. Written by Mike Sussman and Phil Strong, directed by James Whitmore Jr. In-universe date specifically is unknown, but it's 2152. In this episode, Enterprise finds a small craft, apparently from the future, adrift in space, and both the Suliban and the mysterious Tholians are intent on retrieving it. What a strange episode of Star Trek Enterprise I found this to be.
Yes.
Really weird. It's really strange. It had things that I like. It has things that I don't like. And even some of the things that I like had components of it that I didn't like at the same time. And it's just so strange. It's just strange how hesitant they are to say that the Cold War is about anything. They're refusing to be like, they're refusing to nail down what the Temporal Cold War is. They just don't want to do it. So they'll have episodes that mention it, have a whole bunch of stuff connected to it, have weird little side trivia events like everyone in the future is fucking and everyone has DNA from everybody because everyone's just mixing at a drunken party platter or whatever. But it's just so
the Federation in the future is one giant key party.
It's one swinging party from the 50s where, you know, or the 60s maybe would be a better decade. But yeah, it's they just don't want to grab the thing with two hands, and it's almost respectable in some ways. In some ways, it's narratively obnoxious. It's even more obnoxious because we know it's never going to go anywhere because everyone tells us that it's not going to happen. But what do you think about this one?
You know, I don't know. I think I liked it. I think I liked it because it involved the kind of story that I think I prefer from Enterprise, which is the deep space exploration element, and they come across this unknown craft that they have to look into, and there's a secret kind of twist to it a little bit. And I actually thought the battle at the end was pretty good. I really liked when they showed up. They made it to the Vulcan cruiser, and the Vulcan cruiser had already been disabled. That was nice.
Yep.
But yeah, the Temporal Cold War, I feel like they keep dancing around it because they know that it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And
no one wants to take the first stab at trying to lay out what this is exactly supposed to be.
The minute you start to try to describe this, someone in the room goes, "Wait a minute," and then it kind of unravels from there. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't hate it. I kind of hope that I kind of wish that they had taken one further step towards Doctor Who, and Phlox during his examination revealed that the pilot of the ship had two hearts, because all the Time Lords have two hearts. But I really liked the Triangle people, the Triangle ship
Tholians,
Tholians.
Yeah.
Because I really liked their weird screechy language, and I liked that they were described as non-humanoid. It kind of had a bit of like a Lovecraftian kind of vibe going on, even though you never saw them. But that was just what I pictured in my head. I pictured like the old ones or something.
Yep. The Tholians have been seen before in TOS.
Oh, they have?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, not by me. Let's put it that way.
The Tholians are indeed non-humanoid in their portrayal in the TOS episode. They're like 60s psychedelic alien. Like they look like a crystal basically that has like incredible sort of like psychedelic lights going on around it. So it's you can't tell what they really look like, but they talk like that the same way that they talk here.
Sure. Yeah, I like that stuff. I think you kind of end up in the same problem that you do with these Temporal Cold War episodes when they refuse to define stuff, because you get to the end and you kind of go, wow, that was weird. Like that's what everybody in the show, all the characters, that's the only thing that they can really react to, because they don't know what the stakes are. They don't know why these things are being fought over, who these people are, why the Suliban are all of a sudden like helping them out. There's no real movement story-wise.
Or why the Tholians are now implicated to be a part of it in this one. That's the key addition, is that there's another race that's doing the same thing that the Suliban are doing, and they don't like each other.
It's like the Temporal War is the NWO circa like 1999 WCW, and they just keep adding members to it, and it's like, cool. Now
we need a Hogan leg drop to just set everything straight.
Now Brutus the Barber Beefcake is part of the NWO. That's crazy. What are they going to do next? Oh, Macho Man now? Wow. What's the NW? You don't know what it's about? They don't have like an ethos or anything? Okay, cool. And the localized time loop thing I liked as a concept, but
it's so cool, and it doesn't do anything. It does cool, nothing.
But it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how on earth you could possibly jump back into time while time is still moving forward.
Outside the room, time has moved forward. Yeah.
Well, it seems to be outside of like a 5-foot radius.
Sure.
Because once they get away from the ship, it seems to be fine. But it's a cool idea, but it doesn't make a ton of sense, unfortunately.
No, that was my thing for it was a cool idea that I hated parts of it. It's just so it's so insignificant. It's just a scene to have because you're in a time plot episode where you have the characters repeat the little bit of time that they've done. I'm a sucker for sequences like that where, you know, they learn that they realize that they've had the conversation before and about the talk. Yeah. Reed and Malcolm.
Probably the fastest one I've ever seen.
Yeah, they
where they catch on very quickly.
He's like, I've never talked about Stegosauruses eating people before. Why we must have talked about
cause and effect. It takes them like 15 tries before they realize what's going on.
No, it takes 3 in this one before they realize, and then it's 3 again for Archer and Reed disarming the bomb, I guess, which is that one's probably the worst case because it doesn't even really. It doesn't set them back. Like them losing time doesn't cause the bomb disarming to be delayed in any sense. It's just they're like, well, we have to do it again. Let's just keep going through this.
And it's really weird to have a localized time thing like that when you are also on a timer. Because when they get down there, he's like, how long is this going to take? I don't know. I think 4 minutes. Well, it better not take any longer than that. 3 times later, so they're into like the 12th minute.
Right.
So do they?
But the timer exists. Right.
Yeah. Did they actually have 15 minutes? Did Archer actually budget in this actually happening? Does he think that far ahead?
Probably not. It's another Archer episode of flying off half cocked about what he thinks the right thing to do is. He's very sure about what the right thing to do in the Temporal Cold War is.
I did actually like him quite a bit, though. His approach I liked because
he's good in this one. I do think he's strong. Yeah.
He's got this mysterious ship that he's found that has a human on it, seems to be possibly from the future, and then people just start showing up demanding it. And I like that he was kind of standing his ground, being like, no, I'm not going to give this to you. So why don't you back off? Although his threat didn't really hold much water when he's like, why don't you call up, what's his name? The Suliban guy.
Yeah, Silic. Talk to Silic. Tell Silic Archer's over here. Yeah.
Talk to Silic about what happens when people threaten me. And they were just like, can we just shoot this guy? Let's just shoot him. Let's just shoot his old ship with our
ship is very
weapons.
small. Yeah. I even like the I love the setup to this one. I like these kind of like pseudo mysteries, and you called it a deep space adventure because it's a great hook of like, wait a minute, how the hell did a human get out here? Like what's going on? I would ultimately have maybe preferred the mystery to have been less Temporal Cold War-y. I probably would have preferred that as a solution to be like, because that's kind of a neat mystery about like, where the hell did this guy come from and what's he doing out here? I like that they link it to, they potentially think it's Zephyrin Cochrane, which is a cool guess that Archer makes. And that actually fits all kinds of continuities there, which is just kind of a neat connection for them to make. But outside of that, it's just I really love the setup and the strangeness of it. It's sort of creepy. It's kind of a creepy thing when they turn the corpse around. That's creepy, obviously. But the whole, the gist of what's going on in here is creepy. I love the fact that it's like the TARDIS, as you explained, that when you go in, it's this whole other area that they can get to that they're not sure how that's working. It's all kind of strange and mysterious. And then, almost to its detriment, they reference Daniels a few times, but they don't bring back Daniels. He doesn't come back.
Right,
he doesn't add anything to say.
I thought he was going to be the corpse, honestly.
Apparently, the original ending was that they meet a Temporal Cold War agent at the very end who beams in and takes the corpse and ship, and they say, "Who is this guy?" And he says, "It's me," and then leaves with it. And it's kind of this like sort of strange thing, but they don't bring any Cold War. They don't bring any Cold War agents into it, which. Do you think that's a problem, or did you like the way that? Do you like it just Archer on his own, not having to have Daniels lecture him about what's going on? I don't know. It's just that I can kind of see the mystery vibe of the early goings not being solved by an agent showing up, but at the same time, it doesn't feed into a better mystery or resolution at the end where I'd be happy without an agent showing up. So if they go so heavily into, oh shit, the Tholians are on the side of somebody in this Temporal War, let's all run away from them. At that point, I kind of want Daniels to show up and explain what the fuck is going on, at least to just give me some information about what I'm supposed to take away from this.
Yeah, I like that there's no Temporal Cold War agents for the majority of it, because I like the Enterprise and Archer being stuck in the middle, literally in the middle of this thing that they don't understand, that they're involved in, but they don't know what's going on, and they don't know the parameters of what's happening. I think they don't lean on that secret future sports almanac they have in Daniel's room enough as they should. Because
I'm surprised that it's there. Yeah.
If I had found that ship and then looked at that log and saw that the ship was in there, I would continue reading the chapter to see what else they would said about it. But
Archer's we have to talk about that thing before you get into it. But Archer has not told anybody about that thing because T'Pol is surprised by it, if I'm remembering properly. But he didn't secure it beyond keeping it in the room that's locked up. He didn't try to hide it or anything like that, or be like, only my eyes can see this. I can't have the future be spoiled by people looking at this. I can't compromise the timeline. I'll keep it under my pillow and I'll read it at night, but it'll just be me. He just says he just conveniently picks up from where it was left off in the first season episode where they locked it in the room, and he goes back and he unlocks the door and goes in and finds it, and they look at it. But you can go off of that. I also need to talk about, is this episode hinting at T'Pol and Archer having a sexual relationship? Is that what their time together is supposed to be getting at?
If they are, they continue to do it very clumsily. Just jumping off the last thing. As far as an agent showing up, this feels like I feel like the X-Files really figured out how to do that in their show, where they do the episode where Mulder gets thrown into something he doesn't understand and ends up getting knocked around by these two larger powers. And then ultimately at the end, they'll have like the smoking guy show up for like maybe 15 seconds, or like one of the guys from that realm, like Mr. X or Deep Throat or something, to be like, you're part of something a lot larger than you could possibly understand, Mr. Mulder. Like that thing where they have someone who represents the larger thing give you a little tiny piece without explaining what's going on.
Yeah.
And they
just to
keep the
confirm
mystery
it,
up.
basically, to confirm that this is actually what's happening.
Yeah. So I don't think they needed Daniels or whoever to show up and explain everything, but maybe if they had a scene where, like, I think having that guy show up to grab the body and then he says it's me, I think that would have been fucking great. That would have been perfect. That's just, he's not explaining anything. He's making it that much more interesting.
Yeah. He's really just confirming that there is some larger piece at play here, because there's no confirmation outside of Archer's previous knowledge that there is such a thing as a Cold War, that's what's going on here. The Suliban don't say it to him. They don't say that they don't say the mysterious humanoid guy told us to come and get this. The Tholians don't say anything like that. So it's really just the fact that Archer knows that this is possible. And honestly, it's kind of an assumption on his part to believe that it must be Cold War related. I guess all time travel at this point he thinks must be Cold War related, because he hasn't run into any other kind of time travel. But it's also a little bit frustrating that it doesn't seem to be sinking in. Like, T'Pol still insists that time travel is not possible, and it's like, T'Pol, this is, I don't know how many episodes we can have where someone comes from the future and proves that they're from the future, and then
she's really taking the Scully angle, where Scully just watched a guy turn into a werewolf, and she's like, I still don't believe that's possible.
Right. It's a disease. It's not a magical lupus infection or anything. It's just something else. But the T'Pol thing hinting, I don't know if that T'Pol thing is supposed, it's like, they play at her difficulty in believing, and Archer's wanting her to believe, as a kind of like sexual dance that the two of them are doing. I don't know if it's intentional, but every scene between them is just, Archer's also just talking about, I bet I can knock up a Vulcan. I bet I can. Like, you just give me the chance and I'll do it, baby.
Yeah. That was that one bit where they're looking through the time journal, and she's like, I don't think we could reproduce. And then they're like, what do you mean? We can't reproduce.
Right.
That's not what I mean. What I meant to say, I don't, like, they didn't do that, obviously, but like, that's the vibe that it was supposed to be. And I didn't think it was very effective or clever or anything.
Do you think I'm honestly could go either way. I could be convinced either way. Are they hinting at a sexual tension between the two of them in this, or is it just a friendly conversation that is sexual in nature, therefore it seems like they are talking about themselves?
I honestly don't know, because any sort of weird sexual stuff between them is so few and far between that it doesn't read like it's an ongoing storyline. It just seems like in the moment awkwardness.
Yeah.
It's tough to say.
Yeah. I'd probably lean 60-40 towards it's just they are coincidentally talking about something sexual and I'm imprinting on it. But I think the script is just hinting at them having a conversation about it. I just don't know if it's not sexual in nature or about their own sexual frustrations. I don't know what the point of them talking about this is. I guess it's just to show that in the future, all the species are going to be interbreeding at that point, so there is room for their growth as a Vulcan and human alliance. But
it's also got the tongue-in-cheek prequel aspect of indirectly talking about Spock, right?
Sure. Yeah. Because
it's like, a Vulcan mating with a human, I could not. They would laugh if that ever happened.
That's true.
He's a very important part of Starfleet, actually. Yes.
I didn't even think about that. I was just mostly thinking of it was kind of a clumsy way to show that in the future, humans and the Vulcans do become closer. Like it's the Temporal Cold War's foreshadowing of where things can go. And that's one aspect of the guy coming back from the future that I really like, that they don't even hit all that hard, is that this guy, just by his existence, proves a more cohesive future for everybody. No one even comments on that, which is kind of interesting. Like, I'd love to have I'd love to have like Soval in this episode and have him just be confronted with this. Not that I want Soval in any more episodes, but I would like to have someone just say to Soval, like, what the fuck do you think of this, you idiot? I liked aspects like that. I almost wish there was more of the mystery of dealing with the guy. I mean, honestly, the strangest thing about the guy is that Phlox just keeps a burnt corpse in the middle of sickbay, just sitting on the table forever. I wish there was just more about him.
It's not going to fit in the fridge, I guess.
No, but it seems that's the prime bed. That's where all the patients are sitting. So he doesn't have much going on in sickbay, I guess.
Maybe he's using it to freak out Hoshi when he's like, Hoshi, come here, look at this. Bah!
Just cause another Mayweather injury.
Well, actually, I was going to say, nice to see Mayweather in this episode for once. But
yeah, he does his job too. He flies the ship.
I think this is another episode where they really dropped the ball not having Mayweather be a temporal agent, because Mayweather having some sort of subplot revolving around this thing and Archer talking to him about it, and maybe ultimately Archer trying to find another solution where Mayweather is like, we have to blow this up, or vice versa. I think that would have been really interesting way to handle it. They just don't, the temporal Cold War thing, it just doesn't mean anything. And it's so nebulous that whatever they do with it is only interesting and engaging to a point. Like having it just disappear at the end, and then they're like, well, it's not a question of where it went, but when it went. It's like, okay, sure. Like, well, I just turned it on. Well, the temporal Cold War people could have studied it for 100 years. Great, whatever. I think the problem with the way that they're doing it, though, is it kind of. Did you see that Rick and Morty? We've probably talked about this before. The Rick and Morty episode where they do the time travel thing, where it's like the snakes all come from the future, and it's just time travel upon. It's from the most recent season. It's really good.
No, then I haven't seen it.
Basically, I'm pretty sure Harmon does not care for time travel as a story device.
Sure.
So it's just a extrapolation of why time travel doesn't make any narrative sense.
Yeah.
And so it's like one group goes back, then the next group goes back, then a third group goes back, and it just keeps folding in on itself until it just kind of destroys itself. And I think that's the problem, is that there's no parameters on it. We don't know what's going on. We don't know who is doing what, why certain people can go back in time, why others can't, why the Suliban seem to know everything, who the Triangle people are, why they know everything. It's just, it's hard to really care about it, except for the fact that Archer is, I think, pretty convincing in this one, because he's sort of placed in the role of the audience member who's got this mysterious thing that everybody wants, and he just wants to know what the hell's going on, so he's going to hang on to it. Yeah. So that I think is what makes it work. Yeah, and his I think it's a nice character sort of beats or whatever for him, that the occupant is human, so he says, this is my business, basically. Like it's not anyone else's. And I like him when he sort of sticks up for when he's the captain that is kind of like setting out there into the great unknown, and he kind of tries to like stamp his foot down every once in a while and be like, we get to do this too. It is just a chase sequence after that point. It's another one of like a countless Enterprise episodes where the Enterprise is trying to run away, but all the other ships are faster than the Enterprise and can catch up to it. I know it's always funny where it's like Archer puffs up his chest, and then he's like, engage the grappling hook, Mr. Mayweather. It's like, what? Archer, you guys have photon torpedoes and can cloak their ship. You're gonna claw game them to death.
It just needs those characters from Toy Story. The aliens should be the Enterprise, the claws. As the thing goes
oh no, not the claw.
Archer, Bakula has this funny thing too that I noticed. He does it a lot in this episode. He runs up to the person's station, very funny, and like hunches next to them. he it's very physical, where he runs up to their comm and he like sort of like ducks down with them and talks to them or whatever. And he does it constantly, no matter whose station he's at. It's the approach and the framing and the blocking that they choose to do with him.
I noticed that he's got some physical movement tics that I feel like you could probably classify in the same category as Riker straddling the chair to sit down.
Yeah.
Because when he's in his quarters talking to T'Pol, those quarters have those like angular beams.
Yes, the ceilings that go up at a slope instead of straight up. Yeah.
So if you watch him, they cut away as he's doing it, but he's talking to T'Pol, and then when he's done, he does this really smooth like backwards turn and just dips his head underneath it as he turns away. So he's
cracked his head on that thing 1,000 times.
I guarantee you he's whacked his head on that like 100 times.
Yeah. It's I don't know if it's a good we don't really have to talk about here. I am finding Enterprise's design to be a little boring at this point. The show, you mean? Like, yeah, the way that the way that the sets look and everything, the production of it. I understand it conceptually that it's supposed to be the most submarine-y of all the ships because it's so early in the development of all that stuff.
A lot of silver and bronze.
It's a lot of silver and just a lot of like, what do they call it? Like mottled metal. Like it's not smooth gloss. It's just kind of like that texture to it. Kind of like someone took like the popcorn ceiling thing and like sprayed it on it and painted it silver. It's kind of boring. And when you have sequences in Archer's room and I find myself just looking out his window at the passing stars, and that's like the only thing that you can look at. Do you have any thoughts about it? Its design? We're kind of settling into the series, so you take it for granted at this point. But I do feel it's kind of a boring production set to look at in a lot of episodes.
Yeah, I mean, you've got everything is that same kind of blue-gray color. Even the suits kind of blend into the background, and the colors on the suits that aren't blue are kind of a subdued red and yellow and whatnot. And the ship they find is another shade of gray. Yeah. It's very blue, it's very gray, and there's not a super ton of contrast generally. So it kind of all bleeds together a little bit.
Even every now and then unique locations like the mess hall are just a bigger version of it. Right. The thing that's special about the mess hall is it's just big. It looks exactly like every other room. It's just large.
Yeah. And even I was going to say, sometimes they do kind of dial it up a little bit. Like I love the shot when they go into Daniels's room and you've got that nice shot where it's all in shadow except for where T'Pol has stepped in and then Archer's in front of her. That was a really nice shot. But that's a nice high contrast moody shot that you get maybe once every couple episodes.
Yeah.
But the strangest thing to me is the ship coloring, because in my head when I think of sci-fi shows from this era, the ships to me are colored all this like brown, ochre bronze color. And I don't know why it is, because they seem to all be that. All the ships that aren't Enterprise seem to be like brown, except for the triangle guys are like another different like gray color. But Suliban ships are brown. The Vulcan ships are brown.
Yeah.
Other
brown.
Shows around this time I can think of, in my head, the ships are brown colored. I don't know why. It's just a weird choice that they make. But yeah, it's not a very colorful show. And yeah, I mean, it's tough because at this point, it's not like they've changed anything. This design has been here since the beginning.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I would say it's doing it many favors.
No, it's I think it just amplifies the workman-like nature of so many of the scripts. It's like if the scenes are going on and I'm actually noticing the architecture of the room that they're sitting in, it's the dialogue is probably not capturing my attention on the way that you would expect it to. Not to say that it's bad or anything. It's just I still don't feel that the show has really settled into itself in a way that some of the other Star Treks have, or that you feel that there's a kind of personality to them in some ways. I mean, I think
you're saying it's meant to be more submarine-like. Watch any submarine movie; those are colorful ass movies.
Right, everything's lit. It's dark, but it's lit by the red buttons everywhere. Yeah,
they've got red buttons. They've got the green radar shit going on. Like you're not just looking at I mean, maybe Das Boat's kind of bland. I haven't seen that in a long time. But like, if you watch Hunt for Red October or Crimson Tide or something like that, there's plenty of colors going on down there. It's strange that this is so drab.
Yeah. I don't have too much else about it. We talked about the Cold War. We're at 7 of 13 out of the Cold War. We're more than halfway done with the Cold War at this point.
They just keep passing that story stick around the room waiting for someone to commit, but nobody will.
It's hard to. I was going to say we could take a stab at where we would want to go from it, but I honestly don't. Like, I can understand the writer's position. It's like I don't have anything here to work with. It's like we know Daniels and we know that something has gone wrong. We don't even, at this point, we haven't even learned what the factions are in the Cold War in the future of this. We understand that the Tholians and the Suliban are sort of helping somebody, but we don't know what else is going on, where it came from. The only thing that it's tying into now, and it has nothing to do with Enterprise, is that because we're so close to where Discovery ended up, I'm like, well, God damn it, Discovery! Like you have to realize that you have to solve this. Yeah.
I would if season 3 of Discovery, in whatever ridiculous back half plot they get into, somehow ties up the Temporal Cold War arc from Enterprise, round of applause. I will take back everything I've said about the season if they tie up the Temporal Cold War.
That's all it is. It's just because Reed and Malcolm have a scene in this one where they're talking about, can you imagine what the 31st century would be like? And I'm sitting there going, well, I know what it is like, I guess. I've seen it.
Oddly enough, it's still kind of gray.
Yeah.
When they were talking about that, I instantly started thinking about Discovery. So it made me kind of not really appreciate the theme of the conversation they were talking about, because Reed's like, wouldn't you want to see what the 31st century looks like? And Trip's like, I don't know. I don't want to know how things end. Would you want to marry the woman that you knew you were going to marry? And in my head, I'm like, well, if you're going to the 31st century, you're not coming back. It's not like you're going there and seeing who won the World Series for the past 1,000 years and then coming back and putting money on it. It's, in my head, it's like, no, you go there and you're stuck there.
Yeah.
But that's just Discovery talking. I guess in this conversation, it's like you take a quick jaunt into the future and come back.
I thought that scene was actually a strange bit of writing, because I wouldn't have pegged Trip as the super conservative. Yeah, I don't care about that. I just want to tinker with my engines. And maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe Trip is supposed to be that kind of a conservative minded person, but it struck me as weird. Yeah. You would buy him that way?
Yeah, especially with those two.
I wouldn't have bought Reed as the one who wanted to go forward. I would have said that Reed would have been the one who'd be like, I don't see the need to do that if I haven't had my tea.
That's true. Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
I guess it could go either way. I was thinking it's now that you say that probably makes more sense, because Trip being the engineer, you'd think he'd be more interested in
technology.
Yeah, so I would say it probably makes more sense to flip them, yeah.
They just had to kill some time and tinker with their device.
You got to have your prerequisite discussion about what it would be like to go to the future and learn things.
Well, the way that those two are written, it's just, I'm glad their conversation didn't devolve into, what do you think women in the 32nd century are like? Because it really feels like that's the way that they're going.
Brannon, why'd you cut that scene?
Brannon, I had 17 pages of 32nd century sex. Fade in. We flashed forward into the 31st century. 3 tits as far as the eye can see. When they were talking about going back into the past, I was just imagining if that scene was like the two of them and Travis. And so Reed's like, I would go back to 1508. What about you, Travis? He's like, I don't know, 1978. What do you think about that, Reed? That's an awkward moment for those two. I have my few wrap up things. One of my favorite gizmos in this episode, he calls it like a micro spanner or something, and it's a giant wrench. He just clamps it onto the top of something and turns it.
I actually just watched a Community episode where they were doing a Doctor Who riff, and I feel like they ended up using something called like the time spanner or the micro spanner or something, and it was a giant like hand drill.
Yeah. It was very funny for such a technical term. You expect like a little like laser that's gonna like spot weld something, and he just clamps on and turns it like it's just a giant monkey wrench. I guess that's it. Do you have anything else you want to say? Or should we go to final thoughts?
My only thought about where the temporal Cold War is, I feel like the next, if not this episode, we're saying like, well, what do you do? You're halfway through your story arc here. Whether or not they know that at the time, I don't know.
No, yeah.
I feel like at the very least, what I would like to know, because they give you a little bit of it here, where after the thing disappears, everybody kind of flies off, and they're kind of like, oh, why did they just let us leave? I feel like at some point soon, you have to know how the Enterprise plays into this, because clearly from what we've seen in previous episodes, the success of the Enterprise, or I should say at least the Enterprise not being destroyed, is key to whatever's going on. So I feel like someone has to figure out or be told why that is, to at least give you some sort of something to grab onto with this story. Otherwise, it's just a lot of people, blowing in from each side, dusting things up, and then leaving, and you're like, well, I don't know who's going to clean this up.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was trying to think of where you could go, and I don't really care about the combatants in this Cold War, because I don't know what that has to do with anything. Right. But I would agree that you certainly need to know why the Enterprise is important, or what it's supposed to do, or even whether or not it's good or bad that the Enterprise exists, because the Suliban saved the Enterprise in one episode.
They saved him in this episode too. The Tholians show up to blow the shit out of him. The Suliban end up fighting him off.
But they're not to save the Enterprise though, just to save the time vessel, right? Isn't that why they're fighting? I think so.
Yeah, it's 6 of 1, I guess.
They were more directly in the first, whatever that first Suliban episode was. We just remarked in that one, it was confusing that the enemies are the Suliban, but they save the Enterprise. So you're in this weird thing where is the Enterprise going to do something to help them? But now it seems that that's not the case necessarily. So it would be nice to know what the Enterprise is supposed to be doing out in this temporal Cold War, and to know what its ultimate reason to exist is, or why they needed to exist. Yeah,
man, I wish you hadn't told me the thing about Travis being a temporal warrior soldier.
Yeah.
Because that would have fixed so many problems with this story. It instantly makes it more relatable. You can have him doing things that he doesn't want to explain, and then Archer
would it not be frustrating to just have him going like, Captain, I can't tell you that again,
Yeah, but I mean, you can write your way around that stuff. Yeah. It doesn't always have to be that,
I think we came up with a solution that once the timeline changes, you could argue that a temporal Cold War agent would have no idea what the future is any longer for them.
Yeah,
because they've adjusted the timeline, and Mayweather would not have any idea what would happen.
Yeah, I mean that's super cool. I would be into that.
But and then at least at that point, Mayweather has some skeleton of an understanding of what is potentially happening to the Enterprise in that world. It would be nice, especially if they do 13 of these episodes. If you're going to do that many, that's 1/8 of the total Enterprise episodes. It's a significant chunk, and to not have a character who's not directly involved in it. And I don't need Daniels popping in every episode. I'm glad he wasn't in this one, because I don't really care about that character. Right. Mayweather would be a better choice, and you could easily forget about it when non-Cold War episodes are happening. Just have totally. Go back to it.
Yeah, if you I like that idea of having the future change so he doesn't know exactly what's going on, because that gets you around him saying, "Oh, I can't tell you," and it also gets you around him knowing exactly what's happening every time.
Right. He would. Yeah, he couldn't plot bust or anything like that.
Yeah. So if you've got a certain point where like his almanac stops, and because things changed, and he doesn't know what happens after a certain point, these people showing up, he can give you tidbits of who these people are and what he thinks is going on. But, as far as he's concerned, he knows what his mission is.
Right.
His mission is that he needs to get the Enterprise from point A to point B or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It would have been interesting. Let's
Kind
take
of
a
like
break.
if it was more like 12 Monkeys, where he's working off of elements that he doesn't entirely know what they're connected to. He's got
right.
ideas,
Yeah.
but he's sort of trying to piece it together for himself, and then he ends up shooting himself in the past. Or watching himself get shot or whatever.
Legit. As a young boy. We'll take a break. We'll play a clip from the episode. We'll come back, read some patron thoughts, and give our final thoughts about future tense.
The High Command has asked me to prepare a report on this incident. With your permission.
By all means. I wonder if they'll believe that humans and Vulcans will be swapping chromosomes one day.
They're more likely to believe in time travel.
Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. If you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/thepensky-file. It's the best way to support the show. A couple dollars a month gets you extra stuff like extra podcasts, behind-the-scenes commentary things, or the commentary tracks. There's behind-the-scenes information. There's the polls that you can vote on what we cover. We just covered Inception. It's out on the Patreon podcast feed. It's the number 7 movie on Rotten Tomatoes, 150 greatest sci-fi movies, directed by Christopher Nolan. We talked about it for like an hour and 15. We're doing a DS9 revisit coming out this month. And there's like 80 plus podcasts on that Patreon feed for your enjoyment as the cars go racing down the street. And a special thank you goes out to our Captain Tier supporters, who are Christian Pouch, Tark Latif, Chris Tinsley, Mike Burnett, Sean Cardinal Doomsday, Joint Mango, Matt Cutler, Ben Douglas, Kyle Barrett, Samuel Custer, Nick Sergi, Bradley Killens, Matt Ross, Rune Vendler, Nathan Ellett, Eric Johnson, Andrew Cherlog, Grim Santo, Poindexter G, Dwayne Hackett, Paul Roscoe, Jordan Cooper, Derek Zajac, Kevin Reyes, Vault 13 Hero, Stephen Minton, Nick the Rat, Darth Moss, HH28, Mad Carrier 6, Jacob 123, Mike Harris, Chickies Gamer, Patrick Seba, Captain Brazen, Kevin Lowry, Eric Santuan, Corey Martin, William Scheisler, Zane Majors, Soylent Blue, and Groppler John Zorn. Thank you very much for supporting the show. And as always,
did we lose? We lost Jamie Farr, huh?
Yeah, Kyle changed his name back, but Farr was not long for this world, it seems. Let's see here. The residuals still have not come in, so we don't know what to tell you. Now we'll go to our patron thoughts. As always, if you're a $5 and up supporter on Patreon, you can leave your thoughts about upcoming episodes and we read them. Matt Ross says, future tense, a weird spaceship and a locked door. Just shoot it, forget drills, and then lean in and sniff weird air. Doctor Who meets Enterprise, but at least that has a TOS reference on Cochrane. T'Pol's consistent holding on to the idea of no time travel after her brushes with it is a bit illogical, and then cause and effect light. Although Archer and Reed's slowness works for the time effect, Trip's slowness in putting 2 tubes into a device doesn't really work. All this was again pointless, not really answering anything. 2 bores out of 5.
That's a conversation I feel like maybe they have had it with her. I honestly can't remember. Like, I feel like you need to have that Scully conversation with T'Pol at some point and be like, you keep saying things are logical or illogical. What is the most logical outcome of what's happening right now?
Right.
This is George Washington. He's not, we don't have holodeck technology. He's from the past.
Why is this the thing that T'Pol is holding on to the strongest?
I don't know. It's a really weird, I mean, maybe
she's been very open in other ways. Other Vulcans are telling her she's speaking with a human accent and showing too much emotion. So and I've noticed the change in performance and storylines with her as well. She's definitely softening towards the crew. She feels more, at this point, I think it's fair to say that she feels more connected to the Enterprise crew than the Vulcan society back home in a lot of ways.
Sure.
So it's weird that this one thing that the Vulcan Science Institute says is not true, and she's been presented with tons of evidence that says that maybe they should reconsider what they thought before, at least. She holds on to that very strongly. Maybe with a slight twinkle in her eye towards the end of this, where she's like, maybe I will reconsider what that means and whether or not I'd like to have sex with you, Jonathan Archer, and then she walks out the door. But it's a strange thing to cling on to.
Maybe I can go back in time and be that Vulcan woman on Earth in the 1950s coal mining town. I mean, I think you could drive towards what I'm saying with that conversation where it's like she holds on to logic as the ultimate decider about truth, right? So you present her with this thing and she's like, I can't believe this because it is completely illogical for this to exist. And then finally she has to admit that the logic is flawed in this case, and maybe its logic as a be-all end-all is not as infallible as the Vulcans think it is.
What's interesting about it is that it seems like the kind of thing that is primed to have the Vulcans treat it as though it is a group of sci-fi nerds debating how time travel works. Like the way that the Vulcans would say it's illogical is you point out the plot inconsistencies with how is this supposed to work, and that works in universe, I think, and it also is kind of a meta contextual commentary on the show at the same time. I'm just her feedback is always, they said it can't happen, therefore it can't happen. She never gives a good reason as to why this can't be the case or what her other suggestion would be. I think that's what's missing from it.
Yeah, you think the Vulcans would have like a Doc Brown discussion of like timelines, like those things you can find online now that are just timeline maps of Star Trek through Kelvin and Discovery and stuff.
You're right, where all the lines intersect with each other and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that
would be hilarious if there was one Vulcan character who came onto the show to explain why time travel can't work, and he just sounded like an internet nerd talking about why Primer doesn't actually make any sense.
Right. You refer to them as Terminator rules, or just get a little clever. Call it like the T-1000 model or something. Not make an explicit reference, but just something. Point Extra G says, Future tense back to the old Temporal Cold War. As ill-conceived as I think it is, I'd take this over the slog that was the first half of the season. This is really the better sort of the Cold War plot lines. I'd rather see Suliban and Tholians fighting over future tech with the Enterprise caught in the middle, instead of Daniels hanging around being vague. We still are getting no answers as to what the whole thing is about, and also I have to say it's bigger on the inside.
Yeah.
Good points, I think. I can't disagree with that. It's faint praise, but I can't disagree with it.
I think the thing that's weird about this idea of a temporal Cold War is that by definition of how they're showing it to you, you are seeing time travel viewed through a third party. And once you start viewing time travel through a third party, it falls apart really quickly. Because the key to time travel working is that through the eyes of the time traveler, you see everything else change for that time traveler. If you're not following it through the eyes of the time traveler, then shit should be changing left and right. If you've got 15 people going back in time looking for chips and shit, you know what I mean? It's a lot harder to localize your narrative circle and keep everything focused, because being the outsider in a time travel story is either you see the time traveler exist and then not exist, or everything starts changing around them. So it's tough. It's a tough nut to crack from that perspective.
Yeah. I think we've mentioned it before. Time travel works well. I think that they're using time travel in probably the least satisfying narrative way possible here. There's no connection to the characters on the show. So the time travel, if you just said that these people came from very far away, it kind of feels the same thing. It's not like there's any relevance to the time travel. Even in Terminator, it's about whether or not you're fated to be somebody. You know, there's like an idea that links you to the time travel, even though John Connor is not time traveling in that movie or that movie series. He has to deal with the consequences of what it means that these things are happening.
Right. Yeah, Terminator's not about time travel. It's about fate.
Right. Yeah.
Choosing your own path. Yeah.
That's why here they're just disconnected.
That's why they never explain the time travel in the Terminator movies. They just show up and they say, "Yep, I traveled back through time. I can't do it again." End of story.
Yep. They knew it didn't work this first time. They sent it back again just to make sure that the timeline stays fine.
I always found the explanation for the time travel funny, because it's like, well, you can only transport organic matter. So you couldn't send a T-800 back,
right? Unless
you wrapped it in human skin. So it's like, could you have stuck like a localized neutron bomb inside like a turkey,
right?
And then sent that back in time with Kyle Reese, so he would have a future weapon,
right? Yeah, because he says he can't. I guess there's some definition of what makes it technology or something that the Terminator is not at that point.
Yeah. This is why you don't ask these questions, because it's you don't get answers that are satisfying. They're just silly.
Maybe they're just made out of futuristic PVC piping or something. It's not metal.
Yeah, sure.
It would get through the smoke detector or the.
And if I mean, is there anything organic about the T-1000? I don't think so. I think it's just liquid metal, right? So how does he get sent back in time? Unless, and what's the how much time has passed in the future between the T-800 being sent back and the T-1000 being sent back? Is it like an hour?
Do you mean between the movies or between the characters in one movie being sent back?
I'm talking about if you're in Judgment Day future and you've just sent Arnold back for what is the first movie,
right?
How long do the future guys wait before they send back the T-1000? Do they wait like 15 minutes and like, well, nothing's changed, I guess?
It would have to be instant, right? The minute you send them back and nothing has changed, you go, it failed. We got to send them back. Yeah. We got to keep sending guys back until this works.
And if that's the case, that means they had the T-1000 the whole time. Why don't they start with that?
Well, you don't want to. That's the car you take out when the weather's nice. You don't want to just drive that thing around in the winter.
Yeah.
You gotta throw out the Camry and let that drive around for a little bit.
Also, how did they know it even worked? Because I mean, nothing changed in the future. They could have just incinerated that T-800. Who the hell knows?
Yeah. Alex Martin says, "Future
tense."
Tense,
a flawed film, is what I'm saying.
What a terrible movie. I feel like that's why it's number 9, and Inception is better than it. I think, obviously, on the Rotten Tomatoes list.
Inception explains everything,
except for the fact of why didn't he kill his wife in the limbo. Alex Martin says, Future Tense, I feel like this episode had great potential as a mystery, but was squandered by poor execution. I hate time travel episodes where they repeat the same thing again and again. It always feels like padding, except in the case of cause and effect. That did it well. The TARDIS was clearly the inspiration for the time ship. This failed in advancing the temporal Cold War plot forward at all and came across as ultimately pointless. 2 out of 5.
What if cause and effect, the title was spelled COS apostrophe, and it was actually...
the affect, it's not effect, it's affect as well. It's just British language difficulties.
I was gonna say they keep jumping back in time and they get a different era of Bill Cosby they have to deal with.
Latte Librarian says, Future Tense, the show keeps telling us there's sexual tension between Archer and T'Pol. We're not the only ones who see this, but I'm not seeing it at all. I'd forgotten there was a future database just hanging out in one of the rooms on the ship, which seems very dumb. The real question is, did they erase all of Phlox's data on the DNA? I see a million dissertations spawning from that, and maybe a pre-family reunion. 3 Tholian squeaks out of 5.
You know, my favorite thing about my favorite thing about that ship is that they don't explore the entire ship, that they go down into the TARDIS hole there, and they only get into that one section. And Trip even says, he's like, we didn't have time to explore this thing. Who knows?
They don't even know what it is. I think he guesses it's the engine, but he doesn't know. Yeah,
which I really like, because I think keeping mystery to that stuff is always more beneficial. It's why the Juggernaut from whatever it's called from Alien is so interesting. Because you don't know what the hell's in that ship. You just know it's in that one or two rooms.
They almost react to it more believably. Well, they reacted to it in the sense of how when we were watching this recent season of Discovery's future tech seems like you can just hop in. If it's 900 years in the future, but you can just hop on the comm and start punching buttons and you're going to get to where you need to go. These guys have no idea what this ship is or how it functions or where anything is on it. They say, they're like, it has... The trifecta of things they can't figure out. It has like no engines, no door, and no windows. and that's pretty much the epitome of future tech that they've ever seen.
Yeah.
Groppler John Zorn says, Future Tense, this is the episode I can never remember even when I'm watching it, like when you find yourself rereading the same pages of a book because you've lost interest, which is maybe you're going back in time.
Time travel.
Yeah, maybe you've just gone back in time when that's happening. Mm-hmm. Or like when you're reliving and modifying a torpedo with the most awkward guy on the ship over and over again. Too meta for me. In retrospect, I can't be blamed for missing the Suliban getting killed in a throwaway line of dialogue. I can't remember out of 5. The Suliban gets killed? Am I misinterpreting that? In retrospect, I can't be blamed for missing the Suliban getting killed in a throwaway line of dialogue. I guess the ships get destroyed, but
ships get blown up. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe that's what he means.
I mean, there's one Suliban they shoot on the Enterprise. I don't know if he gets beamed out of there when the other guy leaves. But
oh, right. Yeah, they do come onto the ship, don't they? Kyle Barrett
Who
says, future tense, Malcolm was so eager to explore the time ship because he misheard Archer say Zephyrin Cochrane as Zephyrin Cockfun. And this episode comes with a heavy sigh once you realize it's part of the Temporal Cold War arc, but it's actually pretty damn good. I enjoy Archer's frustration as he tries to understand what's going on, something the audience can relate to, and those time distortions are executed well. There's a huge missed opportunity, however, by not introducing Berlinghoff Rasmussen, a future historian's time ship appearing in the 22nd century perfectly matches Rasmussen's story from A Matter of Time, and with a few minor changes, this could be a great prequel to TNG's best episode. Nevertheless, it's a 4 out of 5. He's talking about A Matter of Time, the TNG episode with Berlinghoff Rasmussen, who is a time traveler from the 32nd century.
That's not the one with the guy with the ponytail that everybody's in love with, right?
No, that's the Outrageous O'Connor.
Oh, right.
Which is not similar at all, but just that was an unforgettable episode as opposed to A Matter of Time, which we've clearly not remembered. And I just
did I watch that one? Did I cover that one?
No, you did not. I don't think.
Okay.
I just did a commentary track for it for the patrons last month or two, I think, too. So I just watched it recently. Kyle gives it a 4 out of 5. Kyle's drunk or high, exactly. Let's see here. Captain Brazen says, future tense, it's another poem I'm going to fuck up. Suliban Tholians in a time ship, oh my. They all want the time ship, but not the dead guy. T'Pol and Archer contemplate how humans and Vulcans might copulate. It's logical to assume someone one day might try. I almost got through it. I did better that
There
one.
once was a man from the future whose penis was in need of a suture.
Phlox entered the room. T'Pol... I can't go any more further. A low 3, okay mystery setup mixed with temporal Cold War shenanigans, TOS Easter eggs and implications, and the continuing theory that Reed is so closeted that he will deny his intersexuality to anyone all the way to the 31st century out of 5. So a low 3 out of 5. Thank you for your poem. 2 more. Nick Zergi says, future tense, though the temporal Cold War is a mess, this episode succeeds on its action and suspense. Very cool to have the Tholians pop up. And even though a Stegosaurus is an herbivore, I would still assume it would make a quick meal out of me. Fun episode to watch, and the fun is lacking in discovery. Yarpy says, future tense, one of the better episodes from the second season, pretty fun time travel episode, and it's always nice to see Tholians. The time loop is somewhat... Ugh, my brain. The time loop is something that was probably thrown in by Brannon, by Braga and or Berman. Hey, Braga, if we can't have the big honkers, throw in one of those time loops. Audiences always love them. I might be overrating the episode a bit, but I'll give it 4 Berman jokes out of 5.
Did you see the thing about the completely intact Tyrannosaurus skeleton that they just found? That was apparently... I've been seeing this floating around. They discovered a fossil of a completely intact Tyrannosaurus skeleton that was locked in battle with a Triceratops.
Oh, I did see something about that. Maybe I must have seen that story. Yeah.
Very cool.
Where'd they find it? In America? T-Rex is in America, I think.
New Jersey. I don't
know. Yeah, they find those occasionally. Ones that it's like something is eating something else, and then they all got hit by a volcano or something. And they all died at the exact same time.
I like to imagine it was some sort of Mexican standoff between the T-Rex and the Triceratops. Like it was the end of Reservoir Dogs, but with like 5 dinosaurs,
and just get wiped out. That's it for the patron thoughts. Thank you very much, patrons, for leaving your thoughts, and thank you very much for supporting the show. We'll go now to our final thoughts here, Clay. What are you going to give this one on our scale of 1 to 5?
I'm going to give it a 3. I enjoyed it. I think it succeeds as a hour of Star Trek television, despite it not being really that memorable or explaining anything or even really adding to the story that they were seemingly trying to tell. But as an episode of Enterprise, I thought it was pretty good. If in a year I remind you of this episode, what do you think the first thing you're going to think about is? The TARDIS, probably. Yeah, I think mine would be the time jumping scenes where they repeats. For some, I know it's been done before, but I found that really unique to this series, at least. Like a second would be the TARDIS looking down the ladder. I think would be the thing that I would mostly remember. But I won't think of it as a Cold War episode. I won't be like, that was a good moment in that one. I wish I wish if they had if they were like, let's make a temporal Cold War, they had gone back and watched some like Cold War stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So you can see like what makes that stuff interesting and engaging. And then throw like flux capacitor on top, and there you go. You're good to go.
Agreed.
Tinker Tailor Soldier DeLorean.
I'm also going to give it a 3.
Tinker TARDIS Soldier Spy. There we go. That's it.
I'll give it a low 3. I think it's it has enough moments in it that I found myself entertained by it, but it's they can't go much longer without. Honestly, I'm being somewhat easy on the fact that they're not doing anything with the Cold War. I think there's a rating. I would understand if someone said this is just unacceptable to have 7 of these episodes go by and like no one has explained anything about what the Cold War is supposed to be. And I don't think any of the Cold War episodes have been what a great idea that just happened to have a Cold War skeleton in the background. Yeah. They've all been pretty lackluster. So
yeah, it's interesting that they did the direct comparison to well, not comparison, but the direct reference to Doctor Who in this one, because I'm sure we talked about this when the Temporal Cold War thing first came up, but a big centerpiece plot element of at least the modern Doctor Who, I don't know if this was a thing from the old stuff because I never watched the old stuff, is the idea that there was a time war between the Time Lords and the Daleks. And in the process of that time war, all of the Daleks got destroyed, and I believe all the Time Lords got destroyed. But that element of time, that period of time, has been locked out of time travel. I think I'm remembering this correctly.
So no one can enter that time period.
Right.
That
you can't
happened.
like go back and fix the time war or save the Time Lords or something because you've been locked out of going back there.
Yep.
And so that it becomes the backstory, the modern backstory for the Doctor, because he is now the last of the Time Lords. And they eventually dip into it a bit, but it's never something that comes up a lot. It's just like this element of his backstory, of his tragic backstory, that works because they don't explain it. Because I think it would be very difficult to try and get into the ins and outs of a time war.
Yeah. Obviously, clearly, there's some things you don't need to step in. That's it. We both give it a 3. It's future tense. It's the latest episode of Star Trek Enterprise. Thank you very much for listening and supporting the show. As always,
Tech War, on the other hand, you can write books about tech war.
You can, yeah. That's Amazon.
Kids got to learn about tech war sometime.
It's vaguely reminiscent of one of those 50 different robots fighting each other shows that existed on like Comedy Central for a good couple of years. BattleBots or whatever it's called.
If we have any listeners who have read the Tech War books that William Shatner wrote, could you please let us know how they are, or give us like a rough summary of what we may or may not be missing? Because when we run out of Star Trek, maybe we should just move to a Tech War podcast.
The Shatner's name is on the cover.
Right.
I'll give him that. I'll give him that much. That's it. Future tense. The next episode is Canamar, I think. Canamar. So I'm looking forward to that one. I think that's pretty much it for this. We're done. So patreon.com/LepenskyFella if you want to support the show. Much appreciated. Discovery continues as expected on Friday. We're almost halfway through that season as well.
How would you say the time travel, halfway through the time travel season of Discovery, stacks up against halfway through the time travel plot of Enterprise? I think they're about equal, honestly.
Yeah.
As far as moving.
I was going to say that, but it seems like such an unsexy thing to say, but I think they are kind of, they're both surprised that both are surprising that we're halfway through it, and neither of them really seems like it has any kind of momentum going forward that I'm looking forward to seeing happen.
Yeah.
That's too bad. I was also reading, there was a lot of positive press on Discovery's third season. Not positive press, but I was seeing people being like, the third season of Discovery is not that bad. I think it's a what's the hostage situation? Munchausen? Not Munchausen.
Stockholm.
A little bit of a Stockholm thing going on there or something like that. I would prefer to have someone Munchausen me while I'm watching Discovery. Would be
It's a very strange fetish you have.
We'll continue with Discovery. Enterprise continues as always. Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
We just had a new Rotten Horror Picture Show come out this week, or it's coming out tomorrow. It'll be out tomorrow.
It comes out Wednesday.
Wednesday.
So yes, tomorrow from this recording.
Yes. Where we're talking about 2017's It, the Stephen King adaptation, which is a good time. And then next week we've got a new badass, getting ever closer to the end of season 3 of Batman the Animated Series before everything changes.
Mm-hmm. Exciting times in the podcast universe. You guys can find all those shows at thepenskyfile.com. Run Horror Picture Show and Badass, and you can search in all the podcast apps. It's obviously on the YouTube channel as well.
We actually, I mapped it out. I'm pretty sure this is the case. Our last episode of season 3, I believe, will be the last week of this year.
Oh, good timing. It's always nice to start a calendar fresh. And then Discovery ends in January, I think. So a whole bunch of stuff coming to a conclusion in January of 2021. Is that right? It is right. It's
including
the current president as well.
Yes.
Let's see here. All right, we'll be back with Canamar, I suppose. Is Panama a top 5 Van Halen song?
Oh, easily. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's probably top 3, arguably. I mean, it depends how deep you want to go into the catalog. But I mean, if you're out there going like, well, I mean, Tiny Guitars is shut up.
Is Eruption a Van Halen song?
I don't think it's one you put on at a party, generally. At least unless it's 1982. But
yeah.
Yeah, we can go for another hour and talk about Van Halen if you. Can we do that? Can we do that someday where we finish the episode and then we just continue for like a solid hour talking?
Just do 5 minutes of Star Trek episode and then just fluff it out with something else.
Yeah, then you'd be entering into badass territory where we talk about the episode of Batman for roughly 10 minutes and then we talk for 65 minutes about which Batmobile we like better or how much John Wayne sucks.
Yeah, I'll go out with on the Van Halen point. When Van Halen died, I listened to the albums. Startlingly low.
Samey.
Well, they have a bad middle section, really.
Yeah.
Like I don't like the Hagar era. And once you start getting into it, you're like, this is a very legendary band that I'm not sure I could fill a greatest hits with 10 songs and be like, this is terrific.
Yeah.
I'm sure I could, but it's not easy. It's not like I'm bursting with songs that I would want to put on there. And so many of the Hagar era songs have love in the title that they all blend in together. It's like, why can't this be love? How does it feel when it's love? What's the love? Where's all the love? Everyone give me love. It's all got love. Every song has love in it.
And that's the one thing that you can't stand.
I don't want that. I don't need that. I don't need the fake Coldplay songs.
per the I think we talked about this on the Inception podcast. Or maybe it was the last Discovery podcast. How many of those Van Halen songs about love constitute real songs about love?
They're all fake. None of them have any bearing on what love is. It's just someone going, how do I know when it's love? It's just something you feel forever.
I listened to a bunch of it as well. And I realized that they have it. I like the Hagar era more than I think you do. And if we really want to have this discussion, we got to get Dave on the podcast.
Yeah, who likes the Hagar era?
Loves the Hagar stuff. I think when I was listening to the David Lee Roth stuff, I was kind of surprised at how samey it was. They've got three types of song, and when they do it well, they fucking nail it. But there's like 15 versions of each one of those songs, and the ones that aren't amazing they're fine. It's like it's a Van Halen song, sure. And so if you're listening through, especially if you're listening all in a row, by the time you get to like Diver Down and you're listening to the 5th time they've tried to recreate Ain't Talking About Love.
Yeah.
Like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
same with the Hagar stuff too. It's like I think the first Hagar album is actually really good, but then after that, it's just like they try.
Rinse and repeat.
Yeah, the thing with them is undeniably talented, right?
Undeniably,
Van Halen-
10 years ahead of everyone else who sounds like
Yes.
them is 10 years
Yes.
later. Yeah.
I always say that before Van Halen, every lead singer wanted to be Robert Plant, and after Van Halen, every lead singer wanted to be David Lee Roth. So it's
Yep.
like it's a very stark change. Eddie Van Halen, obviously, undeniably revolutionized everything. But like they were stuck, they were this like high energy party band that at a certain point you got to keep that energy going. And after a certain point, it just feels like they're trying so hard
Yep.
to keep the energy up. Like I don't know if
And they're
you've seen,
so tired.
yeah, like they kind of mellow out with the Hagar stuff, and it's like, yeah, we still like to have a good time, but we also have to think we have family and taxes.
we have mortgages.
Yeah, we have mortgages. we party from 3 to 5 now.
Right.
And then like if you get to the Gary Sharon stuff, it's just like they're trying so hard to be capital V, capital H Van Halen, and it's just
That was just one
It's
album with
exhausting.
him, though, right?
yeah.
He had one album. Yeah. So it was slightly, it wasn't a letdown, but it was for a band that I was expecting to be like walk away from appreciating like new depths or something. It was actually they're obviously important, but their discography is slightly lacking for a band that's so
I would agree.
powerful.
Like I don't think it would be tough for me to like sit down and listen through all the Van Halen and
Yeah.
really be into it.
Right. Yeah. All right, we're done. Canamar is next. We'll be back with Discovery. Check out all the other shows at thepenskyfile.com and otherwise support the show at patreon.com/thepenskyfile. Thank you very much for listening.
We just lost Michael Anthony as a patron, by the way.
But he's got greatest backing vocals in rock and roll history. Goes to that guy.
Dude's got pipes.
Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you.